Okay, yeah, I know. It's weird. But hey, today's May the 4th. So, got to get into character. And it's Free Comic Book Day. I don't know how anybody else sees it, but today, nerds are winning. From the Vault 319 recording room, this is the Twee'quel Podcast. What's up, everybody? I'm JakeAlexander, the voice in the void, the lone wolf, your favorite host with a lisp. Welcome to another episode of the Twee'quel Podcast. Happy Saturday to you. Happy Star Wars Day and happy Free Comic Book Day. It is a lot of stuff going on this week. Tomorrow's Cinco de Mayo, so, tacos and tequila and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just going to be a good weekend. The sun's shining. Finally, we actually got some decent weather after being rained on for the past 2 weeks around here. But we are doing well. I hope you are doing well. We don't have a lot to do today. I am trying to speed this episode up so we can get out there. I really want to get to the Free Comic Book Day and check out as much stuff as I can. Plus, I want to hang out with the nerds for Star Wars Day. I'm pretty sure you want to too. If you tune into this pokey little podcast, I'm pretty sure you want to too. But today we're going to talk about that latest episode of X-Men 97. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to talk about a film that I should have watched when it came out almost a decade ago, and I finally got around to watching it. And I'm really angry at myself for not watching it because it made me break a promise that I said about this podcast that I wasn't going to do, and I did it. But we'll get to that. But first up, let's get to the news. So first up on the news, let's talk about what's going on at the box office. We actually have 2 new films to jump into the top 3 this week. So taking over the top spot, the new Zendaya film, Challengers. I haven't seen it myself. I don't know if I want to see it. I probably do want to go see it. It's Zendaya. She's actually a pretty good actress. I like her. She's fun. And it's about tennis. Tennis really isn't one of my favorite sports, but hey, I'm willing to tune in and give it a check. So after I see it, if I decide that it's something that we ought to talk about, we will come back and talk about it. Number 2, Unsung Hero, about a mom who inspires her family to do better and be better. Sounds like a good film that's coming up on Mother's Day that we can all take our moms to go see and watch. Well, you can take your moms. Mine's in heaven, so she's up there watching free cable and hanging out with dad and my grandmother. But hey, that's a whole different story. Godzilla Kong is still hanging on to the number 3 spot. So I don't think that movie's going to go anywhere. It's headed to streaming sites already, and it's over $500 million. Maybe might even hit 6 if it keeps hanging on and staying in the theaters as long as it is. But the fact that to see those 2 films just jump right into the top spot and knock off some heavyweight contenders, but Kong still holds on. That kind of goes to what I was saying about before, that the box office this year may be one of our best box office years in the last maybe 5 or 6, maybe in the last decade. We don't know. We'll see how it goes to the end of the year. Our new films this week is actually Fall Guy, which is actually has somebody that we're going to talk about at the end of the news. Winston Duke is in it. But I do want to see that film when it does come out. Horror film Tarot also comes out this weekend, and we got an anime film actually coming out this weekend as well. Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Freedom. I don't know how that one's going to go. I'm a Mobile Suit Gundam fan, so I'm definitely going to go see that one for sure. Horror film Tarot. This early in the year for horror films always seem kind of weird for me, but the last few years we've had horror films come out this early, and they've actually been pretty good, so I'm going to go see that one, and I'm going to go see Fall Guy. So after I see all those, we're probably going to talk about all 3 of them. Absolutely, for sure. I can't wait for all of those to come out, but we'll talk about them when they come. So SAG-AFTRA actually has struck a deal with Nielsen, the rating company. Now, they're going to do third-party rating for streaming sites in order for SAG-AFTRA to report how shows are doing. Now, this comes after Netflix has said that they aren't going to report any of the streaming data for any of their shows going forward, starting, I think they said it's going to start in September. Now, this, I feel, is going to cause a big rift, and it's going to have where streamers are not reporting, and then SAG-AFTRA will report. Then there's going to be disputes between what is and what isn't good. And the way these streaming sites work, even if a show is good, they'll cancel it so they don't have to keep paying those higher wages that for directors and actors and everything else that SAG-AFTRA and that the writers and the actors won in their strikes. So let's see how it all goes. When that happens, I'll let you know exactly how I feel about it. Giancarlo Esposito, I'm pretty sure you know the name. Fabulous actor, has been in a ton of projects that we all love. Guess what? He is now officially a part of the MCU. but we don't know who he's playing. He's being very tight-lipped about exactly who he's going to play. The deal just went through and just got signed actually late last night. Nobody at Marvel or Disney has said anything about who's going to be playing what, about what he's going to be in. Me personally, this is just a theory. I have nothing else to back it up, but I think he's going to wind up being the voice of Galactus. That's what I think. If anybody could deliver a powerful standout voice for such an important character, especially in the Fantastic Four, you're going to need all of the firepower you can to make sure that movie does well. Giancarlo Esposito is definitely a person that I could see actually doing the voice, but we don't know who he's going to do. When I find out, I'll let you know. We're not getting a Jessica Jones show. Not yet anyway. But how about a Jessica Jones novel? So coming from the writer Lisa Jewell, there will be a book titled Breaking the Dark, a Jessica Jones Marvel crime novel. That's a long title, I know, but that's the title of it. So apparently this novel will involve Jessica Jones going to Britain to investigate some crime, and it's just going to be involved within the Marvel universe, but focused around Jessica Jones. Now, to me, this is a good idea. If you're not going to do a show about certain characters, but you still want to keep them within the public eye for people to remember that, hey, we have these characters, they could pop up sometime in the MCU. You actually want to use them in other properties. If it's not a TV show or if it's not a movie, it definitely has to be something non-visual media. Maybe a book. I mean, throw him or her in a video game. Maybe even come up with a card game, stickers, coloring books, whatever. This is a good idea. I am going to go buy this book. I'm going to head to Barnes and Noble or wherever I can order, and I'm going to get this book. The book comes out on July 2nd through Hyperion Avenue Publishing. So when that book comes out, I'm going to read it, or at least I'm going to read the first couple of chapters, and I'm going to let you know what I think about it. So the X-Men show, X-Men 97, which we will be talking about the latest episode coming up soon, it has been doing so well. I guess this is why Marvel decided to dip into the video game market, and we have two X-Men games coming soon. Now, they haven't actually given us the release dates, and we don't even know exactly which games or what type of games each property is going to be. Now, me personally, I would dip back into one of the older games and make an updated version of it. Something like Children of the Atom, or maybe even, try to get Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and do a new, like Marvel vs. Capcom 4, because we had 3 and it really wasn't that good, even though it was all right. But, maybe do Marvel vs. Capcom and incorporate more of the X-Men into it, and we can do something like that. But either way, we got 2 X-Men themed video games coming in. I'm sorry, that tickles my heart. I just love that. This show is absolutely fantastic, and everything X-Men right now is on the up. So when those video games get a little closer and we get more information, I'll let you know. So we're going to end the news today by me asking you a question. What would you think about Winston Duke playing Batman? So apparently Winston Duke has taken to social media to say, hey, with the new Batman Brave and the Bold, not the Batman with Robert Pattinson, he's still in his own universe doing his thing, but a new film, Batman Brave and the Bold, is supposedly coming out. So Winston Duke has decided to take to social media and tell all his fans that, hey, make some noise, let's see if we can get me to playing Batman. Now, he has actually played Bruce Wayne / Batman before in the Batman Unburied podcast. He did the voice for Bruce Wayne / Batman. Now, me personally, if this is going to be a live action movie, you don't want Winston Duke playing Bruce Wayne Batman. You already know, I know, you know, everybody knows, whether they want to admit it or not. If a black man shows up as Bruce Wayne, there is going to be a gigantic backlash. So let's not do that. But there is somebody who has donned the bat suit, is black, in DC, and crosses over with the Bat family. Batwing, aka Luke Fox, the son of Lucius Fox, a friend of Batman, and is part of the Bat family. Have Winston Duke play him. Yes, Winston Duke is a little bit bigger and a little bit more bulkier than what we see in the comics, but that's okay. We can stretch our imagination a little bit. So if you want to do that, do that. Let's not have him play Bruce Wayne. We don't want the backlash. DC, you're quiet right now, and you're off to a good start on getting things rejumping. Let's not go crazy about it. But hey, I love Winston Duke. Anything he's in, I'm willing to check out. That's all the news for now. Don't forget to check out the Instagram page at @the_Twee'quel_pod. Up next, I am going to talk about a promise that I broke that I am now going to fix. I'm going to be honest. 2014 was a completely different time for me. I wasn't even a father yet. I was married, but my mom was still alive. I was struggling with a lot of different things, but hey, that's a whole different story. But in that year, a certain little film came out called Noah, starring Russell Crowe as the titular character from the Bible. I immediately didn't even think about going to see the film. When I finally made up my mind that, hey, maybe I'd go see it, I did the one thing that I said I was never going to do. I decided to read reviews of a film instead of just going to see it and making up my own mind. Most of the reviews were bad. A lot of cherry picking on small things of the film, and I let it sway me to the point that I never went and saw it. Fast forward, we are almost a decade away from it, right? Well, actually, we are. A full decade, 2014, 2024. And I finally got around and sat down and watched this movie beginning to end. And I am completely angry at myself because I should have went and saw this movie then. It's actually not a bad film. Now, see, if you've seen it already, you would probably know. Is it exactly as the Bible story says? Well, no. Genesis, when talking about Noah and the flood, doesn't give you a lot of details. So the director, Darren Aronofsky, took literary license and tried to fill in the blanks. He turned a straightforward biblical story into a sweeping fantasy epic. But he did an okay job with it. It wasn't that bad of a film. Now, you're going to get realists and literalists who have read the Bible and say, hey, you did too much. You changed too many things of the story. You've taken away everything out of the story, and the movie is no good. Well, I don't think so. Read the Bible, read the story, and I guarantee you there will be questions. Well, actually, how big is the ark? Well, where do all the animals fit? What actually happened leading up to that? Well, you don't get a lot of those details in the Bible, but like I said, Darren Aronofsky took literary license and decided to fill in those blanks. And he actually created a very good fantasy film with a biblical story. He doesn't actually change anything. He actually just adds to the story. Now, I've always stated that if you're going to change anything, don't take away, just add to it. If that makes the story that you're telling longer, then that's fine. But just don't take away, because once you start taking away, then you change the very nature of the story. Well, he didn't. He added a ton to it without actually having to change anything. Now, like I said, this is a star-laden cast. Outside of Russell Crowe, you have Jennifer Connelly, Anthony Hopkins, Ray Winstone, Emma Watson, a very young Logan Lerman, and you even got Kevin Durant. I bet you know that name. I bet you know the face, but not the name, I should say. I mean, a ton of talent, and everybody in it is actually really good. Now, if you want to say anything is wrong with the film itself is pretty good, but it doesn't do a lot with character study, which Darren Aronofsky is known for. Look at the films in his repertoire. Requiem for a Dream, fantastic film from 2008. The Wrestler, won an Academy Award. Black Swan, highly lauded. And The Whale, just from a couple of years ago. Every one of those films does a great job of not just telling the story, but digging into what makes the characters tick. Now, if anything, Noah doesn't actually do that. There's a lot to fill in from the Bible, and it's just go, go, go. But compared to those other movies, then maybe this one is actually on point with just being go, go, go and not doing so much character study. This is actually, after all, an epic fantasy film. This isn't a drama. So maybe it's not that big a deal. But like I said, that is just me cherry picking. Now, even if you're a Christian, I would say you should see this film. If you're not, you should still see this film. It's actually really fun. There's a lot of action sequences. And yes, I'm actually saying action sequences about a biblical story of a film. There are a lot of action sequences that are really good. There are a lot of things where Russell Crowe and who is playing Noah and his family, they get into, and you say, well, wow, well, did that actually happen in the Bible? You can read it and it says yes. And maybe that would actually get you to wanting to see other biblical stories become films. Because from what I know of the Bible, I know for a fact there are a lot of stories in it that should be movies. And maybe, just maybe, if this movie actually gets a little bit more pub and a little bit more people, a few more people actually telling the truth about this film, then maybe we actually could. Now, the movie is playing on tons of different streaming sites right now. I mean, hell, you can watch it for free on Pluto TV, which is exactly what I did, by the way. I suggest highly watch the film. It's not very long, and it actually moves pretty well. I mean, even the whole being on the boat with all the animals and the set pieces is just a feast for the eyes. It's a really good movie. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, is it the highest rated movie I've ever done? No, it's easily a 6. But for the type of movie that it is, from the source material that it came from, that's actually really good in my opinion. We are at the point now where we can just fully admit it. Now, I've said this before, and I said you may not agree with me, but you're going to have to at some point. And here's the point. X-Men 97 is the best thing to happen to the MCU. And I'm not talking about since Endgame. I mean, period. Every single thing that this show has done has hit the nail on the head every single episode. We are at episode 8, heading into episode 9 next week. This show has not slowed down. It has not missed a beat. Every single episode is full of Easter eggs and cameos and callbacks and every single thing that we wanted from an X-Men series. Every single thing we wanted from a Marvel property is on display in X-Men 97. Every single thing that everybody thought going into this show before it ever debuted with the first episode, everything they thought is completely wrong. Every single thing that we wanted, like I said, from any Marvel property, we got it here. We wanted adherence to the comic books. We wanted to just see what was on the page to come to life. Bo DeMayo and his crew gave us exactly that and a hell of a lot more. And nobody can disagree with that. None of it. And the fact that he was fired before the show ever started and has consistently since episode 3 or 4 been on Twitter and on social media telling everybody, hey, before this next episode, read this or look this up. And now that you know this, this is this, and giving us insight as to what made the show come together and filling in blanks that we may not have caught going forward. That just tells me the dedication to not just the work he was doing for the show, but the fact that he is a fan of this material more than anything else. And I appreciate that. And if you can't appreciate that, then what the hell are you doing watching anything that's got to do with comic books or anything nerd-wise? This episode just lets us know that the Genosha massacre was just the beginning, right? Bastion is now put his actions into play. He has millions of those Prime Sentinels flying around the earth, trying to take out every mutant that they come across. The X-Men and are trying their best to figure out how to stop them, but they become overwhelmed because there's just too many of these Prime Sentinels who can take out a whole X-Men team, and now you have millions of them coming after every mutant. Well, in the end, they get overwhelmed and Bastion looks like he won, but it takes a finally escaped Magneto to say the one word, enough, and to take actions into his own hand and to just wipe out everything with an electromagnetic pulse. And I'm not just talking about Sentinels. I mean, everything electronic on this planet is now just fried because of this electromagnetic pulse he has engulfed our entire planet with. And in the end, we get Professor X flying back to Earth just as he said he was going to do, and he utters the words my X-Men, as he decides to take control. But I got a feeling it's far too late. And I think this season, because we do have another season already on the books getting ready to come out after this, I think this season is going to end just basically with the X-Men lost and them scattered to the wind. I don't know exactly if that's true, but I got a feeling that's how it's going to end. It's not going to end well for them. It's just going to be them scattered to the wind. And there are some notes about what actually happens toward the end of this season. Bo DeMayo has already confirmed a couple of things, but we'll get to those notes at the end. So I know you didn't tune in for me to recap the episode because you've probably seen it. What you want to know is all the Easter eggs and the cameos that we saw and where they come from. And I have a lot of them, right? There were at least another 50 or 60 Easter eggs just throughout it that I caught right off the bat. Another 20 or so that friends of mine called me and said, hey, did you get this? Did you see this? And I added them to the list. There are a lot, but we're not going to go over every last one of them. There's just no time to do all that. We're only going to go over my absolute favorites, right? It's 20 some out of those, but still, if I actually went over every single one of them, this portion of the podcast would be very long, and I don't want to do that. So our first Easter egg was the fact that Professor X was added back to the intro for the first time this year. Why? Because we saw him that he's alive and now he's back on Earth at the end of this episode. Then they added him right back to the title card, which is actually good. The one part of that intro that I don't think anybody else has spoken of, the one part of that intro from the old original intro to this one that they never changed was the classic face-off, the one where Professor X touches his head, Magneto clenches his fist, and the two teams run at each other. And then in that collision, we get the X-Men 97 title card, and in the original, just a regular X-Men title card. They never changed that. That has always been the same, which told me that from the beginning. I said this before, if you remember, Professor X couldn't have been dead, because that part, after we figured out that they were changing every single thing in the title cards and in the intro, they were changing things week to week. That's the one thing that never changed. So that let me know that Magneto was never dead and Professor X was in fact coming back, and here we are. So I was right about that. I'm actually glad. I don't like to toot my own horn, but toot, because I was right about that. We actually get a shot of Magneto standing on top of Asteroid M, and that was actually shown in the two-parter Sanctuary from the original series, where Magneto just gets tired of everything that the mutants are going through, so he adopts this asteroid complete with nuclear weapons to make sure that everybody on Earth stays away, and says, any mutant that wants to come up there and live in harmony and peace, you come on up, I'll get you up there myself. And he actually starts, and it's all going good until some mutant decides to stab him in the back and winds up destroying Asteroid M in the process, and it breaks Magneto in the original series. If you didn't go watch the two-parter Sanctuary series from the original series, you need to watch that. That was with Asteroid M. That was a fantastic two-parter. Really good. The original series is good in pretty much every episode, but that one was really good. So was Days of Future Past, which there are a lot of Days of Future Past from the original animated series in this one. We'll get to those later. The title itself is an Easter egg. Tolerance is extinction. Now, number one, we actually hear Gyrick say this way back in the first episode when they are interrogating him, trying to find Trask. But it's also a mashup of the two storylines from the comics that they are actually adapting for this one, Operation Zero Tolerance and E for Extinction. So that's there. When Cable is explaining who and what Bastion is for everybody to hear, and they did actually change this. I'll explain it to you in a second. When he's explaining who and what Bastion actually is, there's an evolutionary chart that shows Bastion's evolution, and it looks like the same evolutionary chart of mankind going from Cro-Magnon to Homo sapiens as we are now. But it's kind of different. It goes in reverse. It goes from Nimrod to this intermediate step down to the human form that we see Bastion at now, and it's actually pretty cool. Actually, also everybody that's supporting Bastion, they all, except for Sinister, they all have that same uniform on with the cut V, the purple over the black suit. That's right out of the comics too. Bastion wears that a lot in the comics, and the fact that everybody that's following him, including a handful of the Prime Sentinels, good touch. That's something that they did not have to throw into this series. They could have just left that out. It's a throw in, but they actually threw that in, and I'm really good. Cable also, while he's talking about who and what Bastion is, he has this hollow projection going on, and there are these little icons that's up on the hollow projection. One of them is it depicts the X-Men. Another one that looks like the shape of Xavier's head, and another one right next to that is in fact Magneto's mask. So that's basically on this little timeline. That's the present day right there. But that timeline itself is an Easter egg, because it looks exactly like the sacred timeline from the Loki series that we've seen 1,000 times, with all these tiny little branches just popping all off from it. The fact that they threw that in there, really good touch. We also see other little icons that looks like it's either the Scarlet Witch's mask, her original headpiece mask, or it may be Marvel Girl, which was Jean Grey's original her first code name inside of the X-Men. It may be her mask instead of the Scarlet Witch's headpiece. I don't know which one it exactly is, but either way, considering the storylines that they're telling. To me, it could mean that we either sometime next season we could be moving toward a House of M, or it could be the Dark Phoenix storyline coming into play in the next season or going forward at some point. Now, I don't know if that's going to be. That is just a theory of mine. Don't quote me on that if I'm wrong. Don't start sending me notes on, but oh, you were wrong. You got that one wrong. Yeah, I'm probably wrong, but wishful thinking. We'll just leave it at that. And that's in that same scene. Morph says, "Oh, great! You're talking about another dystopian future where Logan is the last to die." Now, that's a callback to the Days of Future Past from the original storyline from the original series, and it's also this idea that for all of them that's in this present time to know about what happened in the future, and to know that there are other dystopian futures where Logan is actually the last one to get killed. The only way they would know that is if Bishop told them when he was still with them before he took Nathan into the future to try to get cured of that organic technovirus. So that brings up the question: where's Bishop? Now, in the original series, Bishop does get lost inside of the corridors of time and winds up in the Citadel of Time. Sound familiar? We'll get to that later because I'm going to bring that up. We also saw the future that Bastion had built, and it was a utopia, but for humans. The mutants are actually put to work. They're basically working slaves, pretty much exactly like they were on Genosha in the original series. We actually get to see two mutants working on a conveyor belt. Now, those two mutants are actually in the original series. They are unnamed there. They're unnamed here. They were part of the, again, Days of Future Past episode when they are actually helping Logan and Storm inside of that storyline in their fight against Apocalypse and everything that's going on in that future. Excuse me. And yeah, it's still damn cool to actually see that they just ripped those two out and put them here. Exact same design as well. So tip my hat to them for that. The woman that you see floating, she's in green and she's floating above the earth and she's using her powers. It looks like that she's warping the magnetic layer to the earth. Well, guess who that is? That is Magneto's daughter, Polaris. So we actually get to see another one of his kids. We saw Quicksilver before. Now you actually get to see his second kid. We haven't seen Scarlet Witch yet, but we actually get to see Polaris, and she's actually using her powers just like her dad because she has the exact same powers. What she's doing at that point actually mirrors what Magneto does at the end of this particular episode, where he uses the Earth's magnetic field to power himself up and to send out that electromagnetic pulse in order to stop all of those Prime Sentinels. So that's a good little correlation. That right there is called good storytelling, folks. I promise you that. We actually do get to see another mutant in that same flashback where she's floating all these girders into place to rebuild the Golden Gate Bridge. Now that particular woman is Rachel Summers. That is the daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey from another timeline from a dystopian future, who actually comes back to try to undo her future in a similar way as Cable. She is Cable's half sister in a sense. But she comes back in time to join the X-Men in order to rewrite the future that she escapes from. And the fact that she's also floating these girders into place to rebuild the Golden Gate Bridge, that's a throwback from the 2006 X-Men Last Stand movie, where Magneto, actually played by Ian McKellen, actually destroys the Golden Gate Bridge in order to get over to Alcatraz, where they have all these test subjects going on with mutants in order to fight that last fight that we see at the end of that movie. So that's actually a very good callback as well. Later on in this episode, Beast mentions that some of the mystics at Carmertage they talk about absolute points. Now, the first thing, the fact that he mentioned Carmertage, we all know that that's Doctor Strange. That is where he lives and trains. That is where he was trained by the Ancient One in the first film. That is a very good connection. That means the only way he would actually know that inside of X-Men 97 is he either talked to Doctor Strange or he went to Carmertage to talk to Doctor Strange at some point. Doctor Strange does actually appear in the original series and in a couple of the other animated series that Marvel put out. So again, bringing back all these old characters and connecting them not only to the original animated series and all these other characters, but connecting them right now to the MCU. And it really connecting to the MCU now, but also across the Spider-Verse, because when they talk about absolute points, absolute points are the same thing, or they're almost exactly the same thing as what we got in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse with canon events that actually have to happen, and they happen on not just one layer of the multiverse, but on all timelines. These things have to happen on every single timeline, just like we found out in What If. Christine dying and setting Doctor Strange on his path. That was an absolute point. That is something that had to happen in every version of the multiverse that has to do with Doctor Strange. So if that's the case, then everything that happened on Genosha is an absolute point. Because remember, Cable kept saying every single time he tried to go back and stop it, something would rip him out of time and push him back to, and that event would always happen. And he tried so many times that he just gave up because he said something is stopping me from doing it. So he just stopped and he ran to the X-Men for help to see if he can do something else. So what happened in Genosha just may have to happen, and that says something that I don't really like, but we'll get to that later on down the line. Those absolute points are canon events, so I don't like that. I don't like it at all. The news broadcast that shows New York, it still has the Twin Towers standing up in New York. We saw this in one of the first episodes, and we saw it at night, but it hits a little different when it's in daytime. You know that's the Twin Towers, which is very weird because ever since the the attacks in 2011, when shows do show New York and it's supposed to be set during the 90s, they usually just leave the Twin Towers out, right? They don't even try to digitally edit them back in. But the fact that they went and put those back in specifically for this show, just for authenticity's sake, good job, because this is supposed to be, every single thing in this is supposed to hit home for people my age and everybody, everybody that is of my age that lived through the 90s and lived through the early 2000s, and everything this show represents is all the things that all of us, we lived through and we encountered. So just for doing it for authenticity's sake, that was awesome. We actually get to see William Stryker. We actually get to see an original version of William Stryker. Now, Brian Cox played William Stryker in X-Men, and he was a colonel in the Army. But in the original run of the comics, William Stryker is not a colonel in the Army. He's a televangelist, and he's one of the worst type of televangelists. He's one that preaches that all mutants are evil and they are demons and they should be struck down. And the fact that he's in this show in his original form from the comics, very good pull to put him in this one, because if anything was going on like that now, we would actually have a televangelist on TV. And actually, we do have televangelists on TV right now talking about everything that's going on around the world, right? We have quite a few of those, so we can do with a few less televangelists. That's just my personal opinion. Magneto, when we finally get to see him inside of being held by Bastion, he's pinned up in the X configuration. Well, this is an exact replica of the Uncanny X-Men number 251, except on that cover of that comic, it's Wolverine that's being pinned up after he was captured. But the fact it's not Magneto, but the fact that they pulled that from the comics to use it here, again, just one of those things where if you would not know to use that in this series unless you're an absolute fan of the comics first. And we need more like Bo DeMayo, who are fans of the comics first, doing more movies going forward. We actually get to see up close. We actually get to see Magneto's Auschwitz the number that was branded on his arm. That number is 217842. Now, in the comics, in the original comics, that is the number that is on his arm. In the original movie, when he shows it in X-Men: The Last Stand in 2006, that is the number on his arm. But it was changed at some point. Not at some point. It was changed in Excalibur Volume 3. The number it was changed to was 24005. Now, the reason why it was changed is because 5 digits, not 6, is actually what would have been on the arm of somebody in Auschwitz concentration camp. So they changed it for authenticity's sake in the comics, but they kept the one in the comics, but they kept the 214782. They kept that one from the movies and from the original comic on this one. The original one that we get to see was Uncanny X-Men 161 in the comic books, if you want to read that and check up on that. When Beast is talking, when he he's talking about Bolivar Trask being quote unquote hoisted by his own petard. That's a reference to Shakespeare's Hamlet. That phrase, it means to be done in or to be punished by something that you yourself created, right? It's basically poetic justice, right? So, and that's what happened to Bolivar Trask. He helped create the Sentinels, and what happens? He winds up being turned into a Sentinel himself. So, if you ever decide you want to use that, now you actually know what it means. We actually get to see Bastion's parents in the picture. Now, this is a deep pull from the original series to this. The two people that are shown as his parents, they both show up in One Man's Worth season 4 in that storyline. When the crew is inside of a bar trying to figure out their next move, the bartender himself is pretty racist because Logan and Storm are a couple. They're even married in this storyline. He doesn't like the fact that a white guy and a black woman are together, so he confronts them. Well, the waitress that sorts of snitches on them in the beginning, that's Bastion's mother. And the guy that actually helps Wolverine and Storm and Cable, not Cable, and Bishop fight off all these humans in the bar in order to get away. The guy is a biker and he's wearing a leather jacket. That's Bastion's father. And the fact that you went and pulled both of those two characters from the original series to put it in that means, just like you being a fan of the comics, you have to be a deep fan of the series first, and you have to really be doing your homework in order to get this right. Bo DeMayo is something else. I promise you, all these deep pulls with characters and placements in order to make this series breathe and pop the way it's been going. You have to be a fan first. We don't have a lot of that going around the MCU, and we need more guys like that. I don't know how many times I can say that and honestly be I'm going to get tired of saying it, and people are going to get tired of me saying it. Let's say that when Bastion is talking to all of his conspirators on the TVs, we actually get a shit ton of cameos. The first one, that his assistant, the black woman, the bald one, that is Daria. She's straight from the comics. She herself is a Prime Sentinel, and he sent that one in order to capture Jubilee in the comics, but she changes to the good side and actually helps Jubilee escape, and winds up going on to help the X-Men in future comics here and there. So that character is directly out of the comics, not something that most people remember. We actually get to see Doctor Doom in his first official sighting in the MCU. It is here. It is not in the MCU movie. It is not in any of the Fantastic Four movies. The first time we get to see actual Doom in the MCU, because this is MCU, we actually get to see it here. And he has shown up in the original X-Men series, and he's shown up obviously in Spider-Man series a few times. And the Fantastic Four had their series, and he's shown up in that one as well. We actually, the very next cameo we see in that exact same scene, Baron Zemo, he's wearing his little crown on side of his little lined mask, which comes from Avengers United They Stand, the animated series, which did not run for long, but it is a thing. And his design here comes from that. There is another face that we see. A lot of people thought it was maybe Madam Hydra, but Bo DeMayo confirmed on Twitter that it was just some woman from the UN from some other country who is conspiring along with Bastion. But there is another face who doesn't actually get too many words in, and they have it's a male, obviously, if you look at it and how the face structure of the shadowed figure that you see, but he has locks, and to me it looks like Eric Killmonger. That's to me who it looks like. There has been no confirmation that that's who it is, but hey, if it is, and if any of you have seen anywhere that it says it is or it isn't, you let me know down in the comments. But to me, it looks like Eric Killmonger, and if that is him, that is awesome, because to me that says he can still be alive. Right? I know in Black Panther 2 he's dead because, we saw him on the astral plane, but who knows? You never know. It might just been, figment of Zuri's imagination, and Killmonger is actually alive in some prison. We can always hold out hope. Like I said, hope springs eternal. cross my fingers on certain stuff. When Jubilee and Roberto are out shopping, they go to a store called Wasserman's. Now the name is named after Ron Wasserman. Now that is the man who composed not only the original X-Men theme, everybody's favorite piece of 90s cartoon theme music, but he's also the man who did the original theme song to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and he didn't get the credit for either one of them. Haim Saban from the series for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and for X-Men, he was one of the series producers, and he took credit for it. But Wasserman has as of late gotten credit for the work that he has done, much deserved credit, because those two theme songs, that original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme song and the X-Men theme song that we still hear to this day, two of the best ever for any type of TV show. I don't care what you say. Wolverine winds up confronting one of the Prime Sentinels that used to be Trish Tilby, the reporter who was basically trying to make time with Beast at one point, and he calls her Tin Woman. This is a callback to the pilot episode where he winds up fighting a Sentinel for the first time, and he calls it Tin Woodsman. As a matter of fact, same voice inflection, almost the exact same words. Very good callback. I was wondering when we were actually going to see Wolverine really get down to it, and that whole sequence of him and Nightcrawler fighting all of these Prime Sentinels inside of the mansion, and having to go back and forth. Absolutely brilliant scene. The fact that one takes off and flies Logan up into the air, and instead, Logan can't fly. So what does he do? He breaks his fall going from one Sentinel to another, coming back down to Earth, even in slicing them up as he comes down, which is a very Wolverine thing to do, and winds up snagging one in midair closer to the ground and landing on it, flying through pretty much every floor of the house. The very Wolverine thing to do. That was a beautiful sequence. That tornado claw is something that we've seen in video games, but we actually get to see it on screen inside of an animated series. I would actually like to see that in a live action movie. I don't know how that would actually work or how it actually would look at live action, but it'd be pretty damn cool in my opinion. The whole sequence with Cable, Jean, and Scott when they're fighting Prime Sentinels, and the Blackbird gets knocked out of the air and they jump the car out of the plane and land safely. Let's be for real. Nobody's actually said it. Bo DeMeo hasn't confirmed it, but if that's not a nod to the Fast and the Furious franchise, I don't even know what is. Right? Let's be for real. You start jumping cars out of planes, you're automatically trying to tip your cap over to the Fast and Furious franchise. I mean, that's family fighting the odds and jumping cars out of a plane. That's three right there, just to say that it's Fast and the Furious. I mean, hell, this would actually be Fast and the Furious and X-Men. This would actually be Fast X, right? Yeah, I came up with that right off the top of my head. When that car actually that they jumped out of the plane lands and starts to take off into the distance, we get a look at the license plate. It says SL1M, and that spells the word Slim. That word Slim was actually Cyclops' nickname in his original form. He was rather tall and lanky and thin, and then Stan Lee kind of changed him over to a more of a bodybuilder type not too long after that. But yeah, his nickname used to be Slim in the comics. Cyclops, by the way, if you didn't know who I was talking about. So that's where that comes from. Toward the end of the episode, we get Valerie Cooper obviously giving a speech about everything that happened on Genosha and how she felt about it, and how that nobody was actually shocked, right? That mirrors everything that actually happens in our real world, doesn't it? Right? School shooting, some war breaks out, something gets blown up, some mass shooting, something anywhere, and we see it, and we've seen it so often that we're just kind of numb to it, right? And we say thoughts and prayers, and we just we just move on about our days in life, about our day and about our life. And she was exactly right at the end of that speech when she says the one thing that she knows for sure is that Magneto was right. Those words just echo through so much of X-Men lore. In its original form, it popped up on a lot of t-shirts after the Genosha attack inside of the comics, where mutants decided to rally to Magneto and to step away from trying to do it Professor X's way, and they all started to, and like Kid Omega, started to don t-shirts with Magneto's helmet that said Magneto was right. And actually, I want to get me a t-shirt that says that, and I think I'm going to actually go out and get me one built today. If I do, I will wear it next week on the podcast episode. Hopefully you get to see it. Not too long after that, we actually get to see more cameos right after that scene as the power around the planet start to go out. We get to see Spider-Man, and that is confirmed to be the same Spider-Man from the original Spider-Man animated series. It's not Tom Holland, it's not Tobey Maguire, it's not Andrew Garfield. It's the original from the animated series. That Spider-Man did show up in a couple of episodes of the X-Men series, and the X-Men did show up in his series, at one point or another. We actually get to see Silver Samurai standing in armor, standing in some high-rise building. He appeared in a few of the episodes in the original X-Men animated series, and he appeared in the movie The Wolverine. Also, we actually get to see a billboard earlier in this series where it said Yoshida Corporation, which I told you about before, which pointed to the Silver Samurai. So they paid that off. You got to see the billboard first, and now we actually get to see Silver Samurai in the episode. And to me, the biggest cameo of all things, when Magneto is knocking the power out around the world, we get this close-up look of a nuclear facility in Russia. It is definitely Russia. And the reason why I know it's definitely Russia is because the one thing that they got going on inside of this facility is testing. And they are testing, and they are basically building Omega Red, one of my absolute favorite characters, one of my absolute favorite villains in the X-Men universe. And when the power goes out, they go nuts. They are freaking the hell out. And if you ever saw the series Chernobyl, you know why they're freaking out. But the fact that Omega Red wakes up immediate when his power comes on, they aren't just freaking out about the power going out and the fact that this place may go critical and may explode. But the fact, I'm pretty sure that power was operating the pod that was keeping Omega Red locked down, and now he's out. So I can expect that we are going to see Omega Red, not maybe in one of the next two episodes, but I'll put money on it that we actually see him in the next season when this comes out. The last thing we see in this one is Professor X's pod crash landing into the X-Men mansion that has now been destroyed. More than likely, the power to his ship probably got knocked out when Magneto sent that electromagnetic pulse around the world. And he says to me, "My X-Men," and he is now the third person to say this. And in the comic books, he is obviously the original leader, but Cyclops has said it in the series, and Magneto has said it, and all three of those men did in fact lead the X-Men in the comic books, and now in this series. So I wonder who else before these last two episodes come and go, if anybody else will actually say that. Maybe Storm will actually say it, and she did in fact lead the X-Men on her own for a while in the comics. Now, a few notes. Excuse me. That's all the Easter eggs. Now, a few notes about this. Beau DeMayo has in fact said on Twitter that there will be no time travel to fix the problems inside of the series, right? Everything that has happened. There will be no time travel to go back and forth in order to fix everything. And I'll bring that up because I said it earlier that means that, excuse me, that absolute points that happened in this series, which means the Genosha attack has to happen. And now we know that there will be no time travel shenanigans in order to fix everything. That means Gambit is dead, and we're not going to resurrect him. And that bothers me and hurts me to my core. I promise you that hurts me so very much. I was hoping that maybe whatever they did in this one, it would rewrite what happened on Genosha and we'd get Gambit back. But that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Maybe if not this series, this season, maybe in season 2. They didn't say none ever going forward, but they said just none in this season. So maybe in the next season, we actually will get to see Gambit resurrected through time travel means or through some other means, because you can't leave Gambit out, man. That is just not fair on no way, shape, or form. Beau DeMayo also said that this series does use a lot of iconography and a lot of phrases directly from the MCU and from What If. That's just so we all have some familiarity or some frame of reference for what we're watching, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that everything on this tree goes with everything on that tree. They're not all on the same tree. Maybe they're just trees right next to each other, just like layers of the multiverse, and sometimes those leaves kind of bump against each other. Which is why we saw the Watcher and not only the X-Men series. I mean, this X-Men series where we've seen him in What If, and we now know, and we know from before that Stan Lee, his character throughout the MCU, when we ever saw him, he's a Watcher which is why we always get to see him, right? So the Watcher has appeared in all three iterations of the MCU animated TV show and inside of the live action movies. So, but yeah, they don't all go together. They're not all branches on the same tree. They're just basically trees in the same forest, right? Just look at it that way. The Watcher seeing Genosha destroyed connects this series, like I just said, to the What If episode where he shows Captain Carter the tree that Loki is now is created now that he's holding all of time together as he sits on his throne. Now, the thing about that I want you to keep in mind is that means that this connection connects to the same time stream as the person that we know as Immortus, aka Kang the Conqueror. Now, Immortus appeared in the original series as this crazy man walking along the strands of time, and he basically is trying to help Bishop stop Apocalypse from taking over, because if he does, then basically he would destroy time, and he doesn't want that to happen. We wind up figuring out that where he's hiding himself inside of this crazy man that's basically gone crazy as he walks the corridors of time, and then he reveals himself to be Immortus. So that means that I mean, if you want to see that, go watch the Beyond Good and Evil arc of the original series, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So that means that Kang the Conqueror, and in some way, shape, or form, is actually alive and is also watching what's going on inside of X-Men 97. Which means that we still may get Kang the Conqueror. It may not be played by Jonathan Majors, but we still may get Kang the Conqueror in some form. We may get Immortus, one of his other personalities, some way in the MCU going forward. I said it before, Kang the Conqueror was the perfect villain for this run of the MCU. People don't know how deep and how powerful and how much of a menace he actually is. And once you figure that out, you will understand totally why he was the perfect villain for this era. I can't tell you enough that if they don't go with Jonathan Majors, they still need to go with Kang the Conqueror. Recast him, move forward. They need to keep it the way they had it, because this was the perfect villain for it. This actually also is going to lead us into Secret Wars going forward. I also think, but we'll get to that when we get to it. At one point, Valerie Cooper is talking to Sinister, and she actually says that Sinister is Dr. Mengele to Bastion's basically Hitler. Now this is Dr. Mengele and Bastion actually has a painting called The Final Dream. Now both of these are nods to everything that went on in World War II. Dr. Mengele was nicknamed the Angel of Death for just being such a complete shitbag of a person and doing experiments on all of the Jewish inmates inside of concentration camps. The painting that Bastion painted that was called The Final Dream, that's a nod to what Hitler called the final solution, his idea of trying to exterminate as much or all of the Jewish population if he could have. I did not put that in the notes earlier, and I would suspect you know why I omitted those up there, and then I put it down here for now. The fact that they went out of their way to throw that in, it fits, because Sinister actually is very much a eugenicist. He may operate on mutants and not just straight up humans, but he does the exact same type of work. He's experimenting on these people in order to find something to make himself better, right? So that's what Dr. Mengele did, and it's actually a very good what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very good comparison that Valerie Cooper comes up with, and I'm still trying to figure out if Valerie Cooper is Mystique or not. I may be wrong about that one, but I'm still going to hang on to that she is or not. That's everything for X-Men 97 this week. Absolutely fantastic episode. It is a lot of dialogue. It's a lot more dialogue than it is action. It's a lot more character study than it is anything else, but still, it does not let the foot off the gas. X-Men 97 is still barreling, still going, still great, still strong. Absolutely fantastic series. I can't wait till the next episode. E for Extinction Part 2. It'll be out next week on the 8th. And after that one, we'll be back for the next episode and we'll be talking about it when that one comes out, after I dig into it and get as many Easter eggs as I can, and I'll get back to you. Up next, we'll be back with The Last Call. So that's it, and that's all. It's time for The Last Call. I want to thank each and every single one of you for tuning in this week. You did not have to hang out with me, but you decided to, and I truly appreciate it while I do this pokey little podcast. I don't care if it's 1, 5, 10, 100, or 1,000 of you. I truly appreciate every single person that decides to tune in, and I thank you truly from the bottom of my heart. Before we get out of here, let's start with our weekend watch list. It's only 2 things long this week. Usually it's 3 or 4, maybe even 5 things, but we only got 2 things. So our film pick is actually a new film called The Idea of You. Now, this is about a 40-year-old woman who falls in love with a pop star who's in his 20s. And oddly enough, the pop star is in the film is based on Harry Styles. That's coming from the writer herself. So I actually want to try this out. That's actually on Amazon Prime. So if you got it, go over there and watch it. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. Who knows? And our other pick, which covers 3 categories. It covers our nostalgia pick, our series pick, and our animation pick. It's called The 12 Kingdoms. Now, this is from 2002. It's an anime from 2002 ran to 2003. It's not very long. Each episode is maybe 35 to 45 minutes long. It's really good. I haven't seen it in forever. I do remember it, but it just so happened it popped up the other day, so I'm going to watch it again. It's fantasy and isekai, which is very weird for me because I'm not really into the isekai genre, but this one I do remember it was pretty good, so I am actually going to go watch it. Set in feudal Japan. Very good anime from what I remember of it, but that's what we're going to do. So it's time to go get out there and enjoy the weekend. Hey, I am going to head over to my comic book store and buy me some comic books. Like I said, it's free comic book day. Get over there, check out the previews through the free comic books, enjoy the day, and buy you some comics. It's also May the 4th, so enjoy your Star Wars stuff. Hey man, tomorrow's Cinco de Mayo. It's time for tacos and tequila and whatever else you're going to do tomorrow. Hang out this weekend. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Don't do anything to harm yourself. And remember, if you need any help, if you need somebody to talk to, if you feel the darkness encroaching, pick up the phone, dial or text 988. You are never alone. There's always somebody there for you to talk to get you through the really, really rough patches. So it's time to go, and we will end this episode the same way we end every single episode. God bless. I love you, and peace. See you next time.